Welcome back, Beans Army, to another episode of the Less is More Sports podcast. As the college football regular season comes to a close, that officially begins our regular season as the college offseason podcast. Because Matt, you ready for it?
I
We're less of the regular season, but more of the offseason. I know Matt loves that intro so much.
I should have squashed that the minute you suggested this, but I did not.
You say that, but all I gotta say is that if we can make it through an entire episode without Ryan wanting to pepper spray us, I think that's an absolute win.
Yeah, that's probably true, but you know,
Not a second thought there. It's probably true.
you
Just
know, I have a very niche second thought, which was going back to a show from middle.
Speaking of pepper spray,
I was just thinking of this joke from Chowder, which was a cartoon that was on Cartoon Network when I was in sixth grade, about how he really wants to try pepper spray and thinks it sounds delicious, and someone pepper sprays it, and the line is still like seared into my brain where he's like, "Oh, I was wrong. I was horribly, terribly misled and wrong."
never even heard of Chowder.
What?
Never even heard of that show.
You don't remember Chowder? You weren't.
No,
You weren't there, Les. You weren't there.
I'm a little older. As old as you like to pretend you are, you forget I am actually older than you.
I know you're older than me. I'm still young. Damn it.
You're the one who calls yourself old. So like you identify as old? Do you identify as young? Which
I'm
is
getting heartless. God.
fine. Okay. Anyway, speaking of which, speaking of the pepper spray joke, that leads me to my first question, which is for Ryan. After Michigan beat Ohio State yet again, there's now some rumors circulating that Ryan Day may be on the hot seat. So, Ryan, you're the Buckeye representative on this podcast. Is he out at Ohio State?
well, he's for sure on the hot seat, and I think he going into the season he was going to be on the hot seat if it went bad like it just did because this loss is very unexcusable and it should have never happened. But I've never honestly been a fire Ryan Day guy. I've always liked him and what he brought. It just seems like there's something missing of why we can't beat Michigan. It's so frustrating because this year was really unexcusable because of how down Michigan was and how much talent we have. But honestly, since I'm not really a Fire Ryan Day guy, I could honestly see it happening though. If it all depends on how this our season ends, because a lot of Ohio State fans are forgetting that we're in the playoffs, which seems crazy. But we ended the season probably in the worst factor that we could, but now we're in the playoffs, so I think we should put it all behind us and support the team. Obviously, going into the playoffs and see who we play this Sunday, but I could see it happening if he loses like first round or if it's just a really bad showing in the playoffs. It looks like we'll get a home game, which is really good. But I could see it happening, and it the buyout was going to be like around 40 million, I think, which we'll have to pay. Which we do have the same athletic director that had to deal with Jimbo's buyout. So I could see it happening, and I just want whatever's best for the team and the next best coach if that had to happen. But I've never been a fire Ryan Day guy.
It's worth noting that Ryan Day, since he's become the head coach at Ohio State, is 47-1 versus the rest of the Big Ten. Just the only struggle comes with Michigan. I know Ohio State fans, they're going to tune into this podcast. That's the last team you want to struggle against. I get that. But I mean, his overall record, 66-10, is pretty good. And he has one season where he didn't win 10 games, but they only played 8 games. So I mean,
Yeah,
they
COVID
didn't
season.
play enough. They didn't play enough. So dude's winning 10 games a year. So this brings me to a hypothetical argument that I think Buckeye fans need to ask themselves. Would you rather have a coach that wins 10 plus every year but loses to Michigan, or have a coach that wins less than 10 games a year but beats Michigan? And Ryan, I'll let you answer this question again because you are the Buckeye representative on this podcast.
I don't know if this is a shock at all, but I would rather win 10 minus games than beat Michigan. Beating Michigan is the biggest priority of our season every single year. And then if we do that, which we haven't done in a while, we focus on what's next, which would mean hopefully playoffs and then eventually national championship. But I don't
No, no, no. I'm gonna
know.
stop right there. No, no, no. The hypothetical is that you win less than 10 games a year, but you beat Michigan. There is no like focusing on that next step. This is the
Yes.
your
Well,
reality living in.
since like the um 12-team playoff, maybe we'll get lucky, but 10 minus and beat Michigan, which I would prefer that because beating Michigan is the biggest priority.
Well, it just goes to show how deep that rivalry is. And, I think that wraps up the first official segment of the Less is More Sports podcast. Now to move on to the next segment, which is the main storyline being that Gus Malzahn has decided to resign as the UCF head coach to take the job to be Florida State's offensive coordinator. And what I'm going to lean with Matt on this one. Officially grade this move on a scale, like we're in school.
Before I do that, Les, I do want to add one little caveat to what we just talked about, which is
Product placement.
no, unfortunately. This, I've been thinking recently too about how this discussion is drastically different if it's even last year, because what we're forgetting is we have that 12-team playoff now. So you can lose 2 games now, maybe even 3, and still make the playoff. If we're talking about this last year, then I think Ryan's tone's a little bit different, and we're calling more for Ryan Day's head because they're not in the Big Ten championship game. They have 2 losses now. They're not making the 14 playoff. This is another example of how that adding those extra teams has shifted the dynamics of college sports a little bit, even in ways we did not expect, which is theoretically it could be keeping Mike Vrabel from taking Ryan Day's job potentially. I still think they'll need to go on a run to probably escape the first round at least, maybe not the semifinals, depending on who's in charge. But this is a totally different discussion than last year because of that expanded playoff. And since we're talking about the expanded playoffs, if we would have had those last year again, we probably wouldn't be discussing this move by Florida State because Lord knows they invoke the karmic wrath of the football gods by that horrible performance in the Georgia game and complaining about it, which is how we get Gus Malzahn now as the Florida State offensive coordinator. And I'm going to give it a C because it doesn't do anything. I mean, whether you want to admit it or not, whether they want to admit it or not, I don't think anything's going to get better or worse for Florida State. I mean, DJU is probably going to redshirt. I don't know if they'll force him into the portal or not. But coming off a 2-10 season in like an era where college parity is up so high that we're discussing about whether or not the fact you could pay players now as even the playing field. An offensive coordinator who was disappointing this year in every respective parameter in the Big 12 at Central Florida, even if he has a national championship, just doesn't move the needle. It's not a terrible move. It's not a great move. It's just a move. Did you have to make it? Yeah. But the bigger move would have been to fire your head coach. And that's not happening. And not this season. So to me, this is just staying the inevitable. I mean, it's a C move. It's just what you do when you're not ready to fire a coach, but you want to make a lot of change. So I give it a C because I don't think it's going to move the needle either way. Unless you're able to get like an influx of transfers from a middling Big 12 program that, like I said, disappointed a lot of people this year. I don't exactly know what the point of this is. It just seems like you're delaying the inevitable. You got a new defensive coordinator too. It's the grasping at straws of the college football world. So it's a C. It's not a failure because it's not like you gave up, but you're also not getting the greatest coach of all time or anything, or trying to rebuild the program. It's a move.
Ryan, I'm going to move to you now. What would you grade this move?
I actually graded it a B. I thought it was a pretty okay, borderline pretty good move because going 2-10, there's you can only go off from here. I mean, that is the worst scenario that they could have, or that Florida State could have thought would ever happen this season. But I think he bring so most of his coaching career he's been down south. Auburn is close enough, and he was in Florida, and now he's staying in Florida, going to Florida State. I think he brings good recruiting, and he will help the running game a lot with uh, the FSU offense. I don't know what they're if they're going to go after a quarterback because they honestly they cannot stay with DJU. Something's got to happen. He's got to go to the portal or something. They'll have to hit the portal like crazy. I'm I'm assuming, but I would grade it a B. I think it's a pretty okay, pretty good hire for them, and I like how honestly like having a guy that was a head coach and now moving down. I feel like that just brings extra like success. I would guess because he knows how to do both roles, and he's going to a lesser role. So I would grade it a B.
Before we move on to the next coaching move, I know when I was in college, I only needed about one semester of math because I was a journalism major, but I did run some numbers here. And Florida State this year ranked 131st out of 134 FBS teams in points per game with 15.4. Gus Malzahn, in his 13 years as a head coach, his teams usually averaged around 32.17 points per game. So statistically, this may be an upgrade, but obviously moving from place to place, you don't always have the same success. We look at Eric Bieniemy right now. That's another coach that we probably haven't even discussed in our group chat, who is fired from UCLA from the offense coordinator. You know, when he was working for the Chiefs, we all thought he was the next up and coming great NFL head coach, and now he gets a shot to be the offensive coordinator at a collegiate program, and they only averaged about 18 points per game. So you just never know. Every situation is different, but if you just go by the numbers alone, it does look like a decent move. But again, that doesn't discount anything you all said because you all have your all's inputs, and I respect that. Moving on to the next coaching fire right now. After a 5-19 record in 2 seasons at Purdue, they officially fired their head coach Ryan Walters. So my number one question, I'll start with Matt again. Who should replace him?
I've got two guys who I think would be decent for that job. The first one, Jason Candle at Toledo, one of the powerhouses in the MAC. It's close to what the profile of Purdue is: industrial background, industrial city. Toledo are the Rockets. Purdue does astronauts. It's a good fit. Toledo also has a rocket pointed at the 50-yard line of their arch rival Bowling Green, which is also hilarious because why are schools in Ohio beefing like that? But yeah, Jason Candle's been really good at Toledo. Like I said, the Midwestern profile fits, the industrial profile fits. He'd be a good fit. But I'm also intrigued by, potentially going back to the old well, which is getting Tyson Helton from Western Kentucky. Because the last guy you brought up from Western Kentucky before Louisville poached him had a pretty good run there at Purdue. So Tyson Helton in Western Kentucky, we know what he does with quarterbacks. We know what that can do in the Big Ten. And like I said, Purdue's done that before. They've done it well. Some more of the uncommon ones that I would say, Barry Odom leaving UNLV, that one seems unlikely to me. I'd stay at UNLV and try to get that thing going with the NIL and the appeal of Las Vegas. And another potential name that I think would be interesting would be Chip Kelly. Let's assume Ohio State doesn't do what they want to do and somebody gets the axe, it's probably going to be Chip Kelly. And if you get Chip Kelly in a good situation, we know what that looks like. We've seen how inventive the offense can be. So I think you can do just as well at Purdue with anybody. But my two guys would be Tyson Helton and Jason Candle from Western Kentucky and UNLV, respectively. I think those guys get the offense. I think those guys get the culture. And I think they'd just be a good way to rebound from having a rough go the last few seasons at Purdue. And your biggest rival just kind of did the same thing, hiring a hot mid-major coach, and he ended up working out pretty well in the era of the transfer portal and the Google Me. So you might as well take a shot. So those are my two guys, Helton and Candle, if you're looking to expand if you're Purdue.
Feel like that was one of the most Matt answers ever, going straight with the mid-major coaches, and I dig it. So Ryan, who would your choice be to replace him at Purdue? Ryan Walters at Purdue, sorry.
All right, so with my first one, I'm gonna go with Jeff Monken, who's currently at Army. I'm not sure, honestly, if he would move just because of it being Army, and maybe he's like a military guy. I'm not really sure, to be honest, but he's done very good at Army. At 3-10 win seasons, he has a run heavy offense and a strong defense, and I feel like that's mainly what Purdue is, and what kind of the old Big Ten is. What they're I can't think of the word, but just
Triple
how
op-
what
Kennedy.
triple option.
well, no, just like their reputation is something like that. I was trying to think of that, but run heavy offense and very strong defense. I think he would really work well at Purdue, and he would be a bright spot to bring to the Purdue football program that is really down right now because they are the second worst team in the FBS, which is very hard to do, only when being Indiana State. With my second one, and honestly, this guy's being joked a lot right now because I would say he's being laughed at a lot, and he's a guy that's kind of near here. And honestly, it would be Mark Stoops going to the Big Ten. I think he would succeed there with the physicality of his teams, and I think he would be able to recruit because he knows how to recruit the Midwest very well. I think that they could potentially look at him, and there's already been stuff on the internet and social media of maybe Mark Stoops could be thinking about it. But one big question I have for Purdue is they have to realize and think about how serious are about the Purdue University. How serious are they about their football program? How serious are you going to be to really elevate your football program and maybe spend some money to get guys in the portal, get good coaches, and do kind of what Indiana did and go have a more successful season than whatever that was this season. But how serious are they about football?
Speaking of schools that need to ask themselves how serious they are about football, we're moving on to another school that is primarily known as a basketball school. And I feel like this move was a very mutual parting of ways, if you will. But Mac Brown is officially out as the head coach at North Carolina. So my top question is, how will he be remembered just look at his coaching career as a whole? Ryan, I'll start with you.
I think how will he be remembered? And this goes back at the first time at UNC. This was before Texas. I think he started out hot, but ended up getting washed out, kind of being washed at the end. Couple 6, 7 win seasons. Had a couple good players like Drake May, Sam Howell. Uh, I'm blanking on some other players, some good running backs and wide receivers. But I think he just kind of got washed out at UNC, and they should look for probably a younger head coach that has already shown success that could really uh, elevate the UNC football program. And yes, I think that my word, how will he be remembered would be hot at the start, but ended up being washed at the end.
Before I get to Matt, I do want to point out that one former Mac Brown player, Ryan Switzer, just became the new head coach at Tulane. So congratulations to Ryan Switzer, has one of the coldest highlight tapes you'll ever see. And Matt, I'll officially get into you in this question. How do you remember Mac Brown's career as a coach?
Well, I mean, the first thing you got to acknowledge is that he's a Hall of Famer, and he's been a Hall of Famer in college football
Yep.
since 2018. 288 wins all time. Not a great bowl record. He's 14-12, but was the coach of one of the most memorable championship teams in my lifetime of Texas back in 2005. Won the Big 12 twice, and even after taking a 6-year break from coaching, pushing his 70s, comes back to North Carolina in the ACC with Clemson, with Louisville, with all those good players, and still managed to clinch one ACC Coastal Division championship all the way back in the year of our Lord 2022. In addition to that, I mean, I know he's got plenty of coaching awards. He's a Hall of Famer. I mean, when I think of Mac Brown, I don't really think of him as like the preeminent coach of the 2000s when it comes to football. That's probably Jim Tressel or Pete Carroll or somebody like that. Hell, even Jim Harbaugh. Mac Brown is kind of like the understated winner of it all. this little Southern guy who was always seemingly 70 years old from the second he started coaching, who caught lightning in a bottle once with good players and good athletes and one of the biggest brands in college football, and touched a lot of lives doing that. So, if you ask me, I think I'm going to remember most about Mac Brown. It's just that is especially 2005 Texas because that team was just so much fun. And I have no problem admitting that in front of Les because I know he's going to make fun of me for saying that now. But that team was just so much fun.
I
I
wasn't
mean,
even born.
you weren't even born, I know, but that's how I remember him. I mean, he's Mac Brown is just one of those guys who has seemingly always been there my entire time watching college sports. And I'm sad to see him go, but he's 73 and the time is now. And so, of course, what does North Carolina do to replace him potentially? This is where we have some fun with this. I need to look up this guy's age because today they interviewed Bill Belichick, noted young man Bill Belichick, who's 1 year younger than Mac Brown. Big difference. 72 and 73 are very distinctive ages, in case you didn't know.
But also
And
dates girls about Mac Brown's granddaughter's age too.
exactly. And we all know how much Bill Belichick loves the fun and pageantry of college sports. He's just bursting with joy. I mean, look at him.
He's like Kawhi Leonard. He's a real fun guy.
I can't do the laugh, but I'm trying to. That would be like Bill Belichick's introductory press conference. But yeah, so North Carolina. I think what a lot of people forget about North Carolina too, to get off the Mac Brown thing, who's obviously one of the great coaches of our era, is that I think people underestimate how much money North Carolina actually has and how desperate they are to do something with it. So yeah, I'm not surprised at all they interviewed Belichick, but I'd be very surprised to see Bill Belichick roaming the college sidelines next year. But the one advantage to that is we would get to see an interaction between Bill Belichick and Dabo Sweeney, and I would be willing to give like my left arm to see that because it would just be the most hilariously inept thing I think I've ever seen.
We got to have a parlay on the show of who would win in a fight, Bill Belichick or Dabo Sweeney.
Dabo
Dabo,
would just run away.
Dabo Sweeney would just start do like youth pastor things to Bill Belichick about like his relationships.
I feel like Dabo Sweeney would kind of do like the Dragon Ball Z thing where he puts his two fingers on his head, just like kind of disappear, and he kind of shoots down that slide they got on that Clemson campus. Have y'all seen that?
Yeah, that actually would be funny.
I ain't gonna lie, that looks fun as hell though. Like
From all the
I know I'm 31, but like that slide looks so much fun.
There goes
from
Ace's back.
from all like the podcasts I see of them, like Julian Edelman and all of them talking about Bill Belichick, I feel like if someone on his college team made a mistake, he'd be like, "These stupid college kids, man, can't get." Oh my god, I don't even know what I was trying to say, but like he's so used to pro players that imagine you're a recruit, you just have Bill Belichick calling you on your phone, be the craziest thing ever. I couldn't imagine how him recruiting. He would
You know,
just like he would make fun of college kids, and he would I don't know how he would react
the
to
phone
college.
call's leaving from him. It's from his dog from that draft meme back in 2020. You
Oh,
just get
fact.
a FaceTime from his dog sitting at the computer.
I feel like that would be the most boring recruiting call of all time. I feel like
It would be.
it would just be like,
But
I don't really know if he wants me really to go there or if the AD is just like telling him to recruit me.
I just had a thought
Right.
though.
Well, yes.
Head of recruiting Rob Gronkowski.
I
Hmm?
feel like Rob Gronkowski should be head of NIL funds.
Can
Yeah.
you imagine how much fun he would have with that? Like, you just wake up one morning, you're like a 3-star recruit, and next thing you know, Rob Gronkowski kicks in your door with like a giant Publishers Clearinghouse check from from FanDuel. Hey, you want to kick the football better than me, Gronk? Well, you should come to North Carolina.
What's the other endorsement he has? AARP or something like
Yeah.
that?
Oh, Federal Credit Union.
This visit is sponsored
Wait,
by Federal Credit Union.
Maybe Federal Credit Union wants you to come to North Carolina.
Why did I
does
think
he have that?
AARP?
Um, what's that military one? Doesn't he?
That's what we're
Oh,
talking
That's Navy Federal.
oh, okay, yeah.
Come on, Ryan, keep up. You're the young guy. You're supposed to be like, I don't know, like sharper than we are. We're the old men on this podcast.
Defensive coordinator Teddy Bruschi.
Because
Oh, that would be lit. No, that would be lit. Don't even play, dude. That would be lit. I don't know, but I feel like a bad defensive position would give him a heart attack.
I
You
think
have
they
to
do.
uh what's his name? You got to add in Steve Belichick, the greatest
He's not a
mullet of all
fantastic.
time.
It is a great mullet. I'm just
Second,
imagining with
second
Bill
greatest
Belichick.
sport of all time to Quinn Ewers pre-Texas.
I forgot about that mullet. Sorry, Billy Ray Cyrus, you're out. You can take your mullet to the Old Town Road or
You
whatnot.
just broke his anky branky heart.
I know. Some gave all, you know.
You
A
were
forgotten second hit from his peak era.
I just
What are
lost.
we talking about?
We're talking about Bill Belichick. I do want to throw in one thing is that if North Carolina were to get this done and hire Bill Belichick, it would go to show you why Duke Athletics is headed in such a much better place. Nina King is the GOAT. She's hiring, a younger, hipper coach in Manny Diaz, who's already won 9 games in year one, just signed the best Duke football recruiting class in program history. And then North Carolina is going from one old guy to the next old guy. They're just stuck in the Stone Ages. That's
She's
all I'm
gonna
gonna say.
fire Manny Diaz and hire Tony Dungy.
Oh, that'd be lit. Hey,
Daniel Jones is the greatest quarterback to ever come out of Duke.
yeah.
That's not true. That's not true at all. You are
That was a
forgetting
rage
about
bait joke.
no, you're forgetting about Sonny Jorgensen, Pro Football Hall of Famer.
That's right. Props. Point to Matt. If I was Tony Reale right now, I'd give Matt a point right now. But of course, you guys would probably be like, if we're playing a point system, there better be dollars attached to them points.
Dollar bills, y'all.
No comment at all. No comment.
I am the only person who can go from talking about Sonny Jorgensen to dollar bills, y'all, that you know, and you know it.
You already know. You know what? Matt has a very wide range of expertise, and I respect him for that. That's why he is one of my
It's the ADHD.
lovely co-host. Yeah. He has very expertise. But yes, Matt touched as, to kind of bring this topic all to its center point. Matt touched on Mac Brown's record overall as a head coach. I do want to add that he is a 3-time conference coach of the year. He won the Bryant Coach of the Year in 2005, won the national championship in 2005, like Matt alluded to, and was dubbed the nickname Mr. February for his great recruiting prowess. So, Mac Brown, he was a big figure while me and Matt were coming up watching college football. Ryan wasn't even born for those Texas teams, which is kind of just depressing to think about because me and Matt are getting old. But, anyways, he
You
will
know,
be.
you know, just this is a side note with you all think I'm young. I had a guy in my
Thank
weightlifting
you. We know.
class that is a freshman, and I learned that he was born in 2010, and that just seems like the craziest thing ever. And he's
Oh, dude.
It's
like,
only going to get worse, I promise you.
Yeah,
yeah, I
when I
know.
taught kindergarten and these kids were born in like 2000, like 19, I was like, what? That's like
I know.
physically impossible. There is no freaking way. But I also just learned Sonny Jorgensen, still alive and 90 years old.
Don't forget that next year when they start kindergarten, they'll be born in 2020. They were COVID babies.
Oh, that's even weirder to think about.
Technically, if I was a good football player, I would have been signing yesterday. But
You're not
what am I doing
on the
with
show now. You're on the show with us.
I'm talking about the guys that were signing. So maybe I need maybe I should have started early and worked harder. But whatever. Whatever.
You could have gone pro if you didn't sprain your MCL in that game.
Yeah, I know. God,
Well,
I was
welcome to
one
a
step
life of
away.
welcome to a life of regret, my friend.
Dust in the wind.
You think
As we
Patrick Mahomes
officially hit
has
the
any regret?
I don't really know him personally, so I can't say. I know social media thinks he regrets marrying Brittany, but that's beside the point. I can't speak on two people I don't know's marriage. I'm just telling you what the Twitterverse tells me.
Twitter versus spoken. All right, now we're going to talk about Neil Brown in West Virginia, folks. Yay!
Yes, West Virginia officially fired Neil Brown. And Matt, I'm going to start with you on this one because this has been a topic we've talked about, I feel like ad nauseum in past episodes. So, what is the first word that comes to mind when you heard the news that Neil Brown is fired?
Pat McAfee. And I mean, I say that jokingly, but I mean it literally. It's like, all I can think about is like how Pat McAfee was like desperately trying to amp up West Virginia the past 2 years on game day and with his tweets. And how it just never came to fruition with that offense, and it was supposed to be explosive with those teams that were supposed to be decent, and it just all fell apart this year. They really lost their. They got made fun of by Pat Narduzzi in a game before they played Pittsburgh, and you can't do that in a rivalry game. And things just kept getting worse and worse for Neil Brown from there. And so I was like, well, and this is going to be weird to say, kind of like Ron Gronkowski recruiting coordinator, but it's like, how much say do you give a guy like Pat McAfee, who randomly went to West Virginia and is one of the biggest media personalities in sports? What kind of power do you give a guy like that? What kind of sway does he have in a coaching decision? And that's literally the first thing I thought of, because there's no way the guy's going to be your coach. But when you have a guy with that big of a mouthpiece on a major network, I wonder what you do, like, or how much power that guy has in a room when you're trying to select your next head coach. So that was honestly the first thing that came to mind. It wasn't anything to do with X's and O's. It was, how does having one of the biggest names in the sports media landscape affect your NIL capabilities now in the year 2024? Well, soon to be 25. So yeah, that's what I thought.
Ryan, what was the first thing that you thought of when this happened?
After doing some research, first thing that I thought of was the word players. And if you go to all of the players' reactions to the firing of Neil Brown, they were all pretty sad. They were all very thankful of what he did to the programs to help them be better players and better men. It seemed like the players loved him as a head coach and loved what he brought, even though it wasn't that successful of a season. But they were all like putting emojis of like the hand over the face and like the tension, like crying emoji and stuff like that, which sucks for the players and Neil Brown. But but yeah, that's just what made me think of first would be how the players were impacted on Neil Brown's impact to the West Virginia program, and obviously the program needs to get better, and so they made the business decision to fire him and see who they are going to be targeting next.
Can you imagine if the players just like did the opposite? Like Neil Brown gets
See ya.
just like bye, like good riddance, get out of here. That'd be so deflating. But
It's
anyways,
gonna.
we got about 5 minutes left, so we're gonna speed through this last topic. But before we do that, the last part about the Neil Brown segment is I'm gonna do a speed round, and I'm gonna start with Ryan. Give me one coach that you think should replace him at West Virginia.
I will go with Penn State offensive coordinator Andy Kolonicki. I think he brings a high-powered offense in in Penn State, and I think he would do it well at Morgantown. Just it's not far, and I think he would bring a lot of success to West Virginia, and he knows how to put up points.
All right, Matt, your turn.
I'm taking John Sumrall from Tulane. This guy's just a winner wherever he goes. He won back-to-back Sun Belt titles at Troy. He's really only been a coach for like 4 years, and but he's gotten Troy to the Sun Belt championship and won. He's gotten Tulane to the American Athletic Championship coming up this week. He has them in a position to maybe be sneaky and cause some trouble in that playoff 12-team playoff picture. Only problem for that is you're going to have to fight off Kentucky, but they seem devoted to Mark Stoops. So might as well go out and get a guy who's a proven winner wherever he goes, with a lot of powerful defense and enough offense to win. Give me John Sumrall from Tulane University in Morgantown.
My heat just kicked on, so I don't know if that's a sign telling me that Matt's take was super cold. But hey,
Mid majors, that's what I do.
mid-major Matt, that's why we love you. So the last thing we're going to talk about today is that one of the bigger stories that actually came to be about kind of later in the week, and that's that UCF is eyeing Lincoln Riley to be the next head coach. So what would you think is the probability that they're going to be able to get him away from USC, or that USC is going to fire him and then he ends up there? Ryan, I'll start with you.
I'm honestly gonna say it's kind of unlikely. I just think he stays at USC and maybe doesn't have really much interest into going to UCF. I think he's not winning. He's not. They're not doing that well since they just joined the Big Ten. I don't think they can stop the run very well, and they struggle against some big teams, Big Ten teams. But I'm gonna say it's unlikely that he goes to UCF and he stays with his players and his recruits and the California sun. Not
Matt.
that there's not sun in Florida, but California.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's unlikely. So I'm going to take this time to just talk about how hilarious it is that 1 year into the great conference destruction and the end of the Pac 12, that you were already having this discussion because USC did not live up to the expectations again. And, maybe it would be better for this guy, for Lincoln Riley, to go to UCF for a while because, Les, you and I are as guilty of this as anybody else on social media and in the sports world, even though they'll deny it, and that we always told ourselves every year during the 14 playoff, this was the year that USC was finally going to have a defense, finally have the quarterback, finally have the transfer class to take them to the playoff. And guess what? They never made the playoff.
I
And
don't know
guess
what you're
what?
talking about.
Sure you don't.
I
And
don't know
this
what you're
year,
talking about.
they really didn't make the playoff and finished in the middle of the pack in a pretty weak Big Ten. So I just think it's funny that, like, 1 year into this great 18-team Big Ten experiment, we're already having discussions about firing a guy who the media, especially guys like Colin Cowherd, I remember him being very high on Lincoln Riley when he first got out to USC. And we're already talking about the guy going to the Big 12 to Central Florida 1 year into the great 18-team Big Ten experiment. So, maybe it's better. Maybe it is.
I hear Bear Alexander worked out really well for that USC defense too.
I remember those days, Les. We were
It,
so excited for young Bear and the USC defense, and they were going to improve, damn it.
And then
They
he just
never.
turned out to be a Cub. Look at that. Anyways, as always, like and subscribe to Less is More Sports YouTube and Spotify channel to get the latest updates on our new content coming out. And be sure to follow our social media pages on Facebook, Twitter, and Threads. That's at Less is More Sports. And be sure to follow the side quest on TikTok. That's at BeansDad018. And we got about a minute left. So what are we doing our patented into the podcast rant about today?
I could do my classic rant about how the roster construction in Space Jam is hilariously inept and bad, and it's why it's one of the worst sports movies of all time.
I have one.
Okay,
Les,
Ryan.
Les, you should think about getting an iPhone
Why?
instead of
First
a
of all, how do you
Samsung.
know I don't have an
Yes, you don't have
I
an
can tell.
iPhone?
I can tell. It's okay. I can tell. Just the quality is different. It's just I
The
don't know.
quality of what? What are you talking
Just
about?
the pictures, okay? iPhone or Android? What's better?
I mean, I've only had an Android, so
All I
Uh,
know is that I hate T-Mobile because of those stupid freaking commercials.
who
Get
still
out
has
of my life,
T-Mobile?
T-Mobile.
I didn't even know people had T-Mobile still.
Get out of my